China and Canada expel each other's diplomats. New format of exchange announced between Chief Executive John Lee and lawmakers. Customs bust money laundering operation involving over 3 billion Hong Kong dollars. Hello and welcome to TVB News. A diplomatic row has broken out between China and Canada, with each expelling a diplomat from the other side. China has declared Canada's consul in Shanghai as persona non grata and demanded she leave the country before Saturday. This comes after Canada ordered a Chinese consular official to leave over alleged threats he made against a Canadian lawmaker and his relatives. Sharon Tang reports.
Hours after Ottawa ordered a Chinese envoy to leave the country, China declared Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, the consul of the Canadian Consulate General in Shanghai, as persona non grata, meaning a person who was not welcomed, and demanded she leave China before May 13th. Beijing's foreign ministry stressed China was deploying a reciprocal countermeasure to Canada's unscrupulous move.
This is a move to uphold China's lawful rights and interests and is fully justified and necessary. We urge Canada to stop its provocation at once. If Canada decides to continue its wanton act, China will react firmly and all consequences must be borne by Canada.
On Monday, Canada had expelled Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei for allegedly threatening a Canadian lawmaker and his relatives in Hong Kong. He was reportedly given 5 days to leave. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said in a statement that Canada declared Zhao persona non grata, adding it will not tolerate any form of foreign interference in our internal affairs. Canada's Globe and Mail wrote last week that Zhao Wei made threats against conservative lawmaker Michael Chong and his relatives after Chong criticized Beijing's alleged treatment of the Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang. The Consulate General of China in Toronto has criticized the Canadian government for its political manipulation, adding these provocations are doomed to fail. China's embassy in Canada added the move by Canada has seriously violated international law, which undermined bilateral relations. In Hong Kong, chairman of the Hong Kong Shippers Council, Willie Lin, thinks the incident is unlikely to affect trade between the city and Canada. Meanwhile, politics academic Lo Shu-hing said he could tell the Trudeau administration had to respond in a certain way so he could garner votes for the next election. Still, he believes China and Canada will continue exchanges in terms of the economy and education at a pragmatic and professional level. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang will visit Germany to strengthen dialogue and communication between the two countries. However, Beijing has reportedly postponed German Finance Minister Christian Lindner's scheduled visit to China. Lindner was set to meet his counterpart Liu Kun in China tomorrow. Today, Beijing reportedly postponed the meeting because of scheduling reasons. It's reported that Beijing was upset after Germany's education minister Bettina Stark-Watzinger became the first government official from her country to visit Taiwan. Lindner wrote on Twitter that Germany should take a self-confident and realistic approach towards China, but the idea of decoupling completely from the Asian superpower is naive. Chief Executive John Lee announced his periodic question and answer sessions at the Legislative Council will be upgraded to interactive Q&A sessions starting next week. Lee also revealed he will lead a delegation to Chongqing for a 3-day visit tomorrow. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Prior to attending the Executive Council meeting this morning, Chief Executive John Lee announced that he will lead a delegation to Chongqing on the mainland tomorrow. He said the visit will be the first partnership mechanism between the current administration and a mainland city.
Hong Kong is the largest source of foreign investment in Chongqing. Chongqing is favorably located at the intersection between Belt and Road and the Yangtze River trade belt. It is a strategic development point.
The delegation will include Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan and the heads of the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau and the Innovation Technology and Industry Bureau. The group will meet with the municipal leaders of Chongqing and visit innovation and logistics facilities. John Lee also announced that Legislative Council President Andrew Leung has agreed to changing the Chief Executive Question and Answer session into an interactive and consultative Q&A session.
This proposal that I have just made about interactive and consultative Q&A session in LegCo will take place in an open session, of course. And it will take place in the same way as the usual CE Q&A session. So it will be, I think, broadcast on television so everybody can watch it. The proposal that I'm making has the advantages of 3 current LegCo processes, which are, first of all, the usual CE Q&A session. The second is motion debate, and the third is CE policy address consultation.
John Lee said the first upgraded Chief Executive Question and Answer session will be held next Thursday, with the 20th National Congress being the main theme. Lee believes that the change will further strengthen cooperation between the administration and LegCo. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong Customs has dismantled a money laundering syndicate in a case involving more than $3.5 billion. Veronica Lin has the story.
The Hong Kong Customs recently busted a money laundering syndicate in complicated operations that involved more than $3.5 billion. Officers arrested 8 suspects, 4 men and 4 women, aged between 24 and 68. The 38-year-old key member of the syndicate first recruited 4 locals, including his own wife, to register companies and bank accounts to handle suspected illicit funds. Together with 3 other suspects, members of the syndicate opened multiple bank accounts and companies between May 2021 to October 2022. They used these accounts, along with cryptocurrency, overseas and shell companies, to receive large amounts of money from unknown sources. They then performed transactions using these accounts and over 100 shell companies to create the illusion of multi-layer transactions. They conducted at least 2,000 transactions over a year and a half involving $3.5 billion, $1.3 billion of which was via cryptocurrency companies. Almost half of all transactions were handled by the key member and his wife.
Regarding the origin of the suspected crime process, they are mainly from 2 cryptocurrency trading companies and also some local shell companies, as well as some mainland and overseas companies.
The 8 suspects were temporarily granted bail. Custom officials said they won't rule out more arrests. Authorities warn residents to not let others use their bank accounts or disclose personal information, such as Hong Kong ID card numbers. The maximum penalty for money laundering is a $5 million fine and 14 years in prison. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
The ICAC has charged 3 parents and a business person on suspicion of bribery to secure kindergarten places. It's alleged bribes amounting to over $340,000 were paid to secure slots. The incidents are said to have occurred between 2018 and 2021 when the 3 parents allegedly offered bribes to Fatima Rumjan, a former school administrator of English School Foundation's Wu Kai Shai International Kindergarten. A business person is suspected of bribing Rumjan to allow the admission of his business partner's daughter. The 4 individuals were granted bail and will appear at the Sha Tin Magistracy tomorrow. Britain's Minister for Investment Dominic Johnson is currently visiting Hong Kong and has held meetings with the city's senior officials. Johnson's visit marks the first by a high-level London official to the city since the implementation of the national security law. The UK investment minister toured Cyberport, as well as local British-owned restaurants. Johnson said the British government wishes to deepen ties with Hong Kong and China, with the goal of making his country the primary choice of Chinese investment in Europe. Coming up, Putin hails Russia's role in history as Moscow holds Victory Day parade. As Russia's military launches more attacks on Ukraine. Donald Trump is embroiled in yet another court case. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin attended his country's Victory Day parade today, warning his fellow Russians of the West's untamed ambitions in waging war on their country. The annual parade is in celebration of the defeat of Nazi Germany 78 years ago. Nazvi Karim reports.
78 years ago this month, the Soviet Red Army emerged victorious in the Battle of Berlin against Nazi Germany and raised its flag over the Reichstag, sparking the beginning of the end of World War II in Europe. Today, Russian President Vladimir Putin exhorted his compatriots to remember that it was the Russians and not the Western allies who first entered Berlin and triggered the defeat of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. In a speech on Red Square as part of Victory Day, Putin urged Russians to draw inspiration from their World War II heroics to get behind Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine, saying a real war was being waged against Russia by the West. In February last year, Putin sent his armed forces into Ukraine in an attempt to defeat so-called Nazis, though Kyiv and the West say it was merely a land grab. Victory Day is Russia's most important secular holiday, with observances and events normally held across the country. However, more than 20 regions have cancelled their May 9th celebrations because of concerns the events could be targets for Ukrainian attacks. The flagship Red Square parade, however, went ahead as planned, with Russia's most advanced military equipment on show and a number of leaders from ex-Soviet nations standing beside Putin. Also present at the event was Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Commander-in-Chief of the country's ground forces Oleg Salyukov. Russia's top military brass has frequently come under fire for their slow progress and heavy loss of lives in trying to capture all of the 4 eastern regions Moscow claims to have annexed last year. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Russia has continued air attacks on Ukraine, with more reports of destruction, death, and injuries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has arrived in the capital to lend support as Ukraine prepares to change May the 9th to Europe Day. David Garrett reports.
Fresh smoke from explosions seen over the skies of Kiev. Ukrainian officials claim the defence system intercepted Russian missiles. Still, the missiles and drones hit several regions. Andrei Kovalev, spokesperson for the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces.
Застосувавши іранські ударні БПЛА «Шахед».
On the night of May 8th, the enemy attacked Ukraine, continuing the tactics of terror over the past days. He said Russia launched 16 missiles on Kharkiv, Kherson and Odessa regions. This was the scene at a building in the west of the capital after strikes. Ukraine says debris from drones that were intercepted hit this apartment block. The mayor of Kiev said it could have been much worse.
Kamikaze drones fly to direction in our hometown, and thanks to anti-missile system, everyone was shot down.
Emergency services released these pictures of firefighters tackling a huge blaze following a missile strike. It is said to be a food warehouse in Odessa. Russia stepped up its aerial bombardment at the end of April. As Russia celebrates Victory Day, Ukraine is moving away from this. President Zelensky compared Ukrainians' role in the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany to his country's current fight with Russia.
80 років тому Україна б'ється проти тотального.
He hopes Ukraine will now celebrate Europe Day. Zelensky's drafted a parliamentary bill proposing a day of remembrance and victory over Nazism on May 8th and a day of Europe on May 9th. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is arriving via train into Kiev. She'll meet with Zelensky.
As you will, of course, have noticed, this visit will take place on Europe Day. In this context, we warmly welcome the announcement by President Zelensky that the 9th of May will from now on also be celebrated as Europe Day in Ukraine.
The Commission says it welcomes Zelensky's plan to embrace Europe Day. David Garrett, TVB News.
In the U.S., there are more legal challenges for former U.S. President Donald Trump. The jury in New York City is set to begin deliberations on Tuesday in a civil trial over a columnist's claims that Trump raped her in 1996. This report from NBC News.
A final chance to seal their case. Lawyers for E. Jean Carroll and Donald Trump facing off in closing arguments.
Historically, that's true with stars.
Armed with the former president's deposition, Carroll's attorney told the jury Mr. Trump has a playbook for sexual assault, spelled out in the Access Hollywood tape, where he talks about stars grabbing women as something that happens.
Unfortunately or fortunately.
Who would say fortunately, her attorney argued. He thinks stars like him can get away with it. The former Vice columnist has accused Mr. Trump of raping her in a department store dressing room in the mid-90s, which he denies.
It's the most ridiculous, disgusting story. It was just made up.
But Carroll's attorney argued this is not a he said, she said, pointing to two friends who testified Carroll told them about the alleged assault at the time. Playing off Mr. Trump's own words, the attorney suggested Carroll was his type because he mistook this photo of Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples. The former president's defense lawyer, Joe Tacopina, told the jury to put aside any feelings about his client, saying they want you to hate him enough to ignore the facts. Drilling down on past media interviews, Tacopina argued Carroll hasn't acted traumatized, returning to Bergdorf Goodman, where she says the attack happened.
I was just there today.
And posing with a Trump lookalike. While the jury has heard a lot about Donald Trump, he never came in person, leaving an opening for Carroll's attorney, who said today he didn't even bother to show up.
A robbery at a luxury watch shop in Tokyo's Ginza district was captured on video. The watches stolen were worth around 100 million Japanese yen. Veronica Lin reports.
The suspects were caught in the act by a driver passing by who captured footage of the crime. A masked suspect broke into the watch shop, smashed the showcase, and stole various luxury watches. The crime took place in broad daylight in the upmarket Ginza district in Tokyo, Japan. The teenage suspect stayed in the store for about 10 minutes, completely oblivious to the passers-by. A female witness filmed the robbery on her phone. When the suspects attempted to leave, she tried to keep the glass doors closed, but to no avail. They eventually fled the scene by car. Later, police arrested 4 suspects in a condominium in the nearby Akasaka area. Police said that yesterday at around 6 p.m., masked suspects barged into the watch shop and threatened shopkeepers with knives before smashing the showcase. Japanese media reported that some 100 watches had been stolen, with a value of around 100 million Japanese yen, or 5.8 million Hong Kong dollars. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
The Education University of Hong Kong has joined forces with a school group to develop an online system to help primary students learn English. Jackie Lin has the story.
Hong Kong students' English standards have been set to reflect the wealth gap in Hong Kong. Aiming to bridge that learning gap, this school-sponsoring group has joined forces with the Education University of Hong Kong to roll out an English learning system for their pupils. One of the centerpieces is the Primary 1 English Proficiency Assessment System, which aims to gauge pupils' English level early on.
Our system can target very specifically in students' difficulties so that teachers can help them in the earlier stage, such as some of the students cannot able to recognize B and D, so teachers can give them some help.
I think learning online is very fun. Like, it's much better than learning looking off the book.
I thought that would be great. Maybe some of the parents can afford the price of some of the English learning centers, but if we can do this in our school, and it will be free.
The system's research and development costs went up to the tune of more than $10 million, but the principal says it's worth a splurge.
English is really, really important for our students because our students are going to face the continuous competitive futures and the job market.
This is the students' English ability results that teachers could receive from the learning system. As you can see, students could be assessed in different aspects, including letter recognition, vocabulary, and even their pronunciation. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
With global energy prices experiencing fluctuations over the past year, the chairman of the government's Energy Advisory Committee, Jimmy Kwok, spoke on TVB's Straight Talk program about the city's energy market. He said the scheme of control agreements between the government and Hong Kong's two power companies is helpful in ensuring stable and quality power supply.
The scheme of control agreement is very important because government can give long-term investment planning to the two power companies to get future ready for Hong Kong electricity growth. Without such, it's difficult to find the investors into the long-term investment, particularly on the power generation part.
You mentioned the two companies. Will you call that kind of a monopoly in Hong Kong?
It's kind of monopolized in businesses, but in a way, if you got a high quality of service, reliable electricity supply, it's going to give betterment to the society.
Kwok said the scheme signed in 2018 will undergo its first 5-year review this year, and the government should have a talk with the two companies. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.